Chapter 1. The Call of Duty. Staff Sergeant Roy Donovan's gaze was fixed on the framed photograph that stood sentinel on his desk, bathed in the dim, anemic light of Forward Operating Base Endurance's barracks. The 5x7 glossy captured his wife, Bridget, her smile radiant beside their children, Max, 12, and Lily, 9, the modest Virginia home a blurred backdrop to their innocent joy. But the desert's unforgiving grit had etched itself across the glass, a cruel parallel to how 3 relentless deployments had scoured the very foundations of his marriage. Roy's calloused fingers traced the contours of his wife's face. Once her smile had been a beacon of genuine happiness, but now he struggled to recall the last time he'd heard her laughter echo through their stilted video calls. Their conversations had withered, growing shorter, her excuses more frequent, more elaborate. 30 minutes to wheels up, Donovan. Sergeant Major Willis's voice cut through the oppressive silence from the doorway. Intel just dropped. High-value target this time. Roy carefully placed the photograph into his rucksack, a silent promise to the smiling faces within. On my way, sir. At 35 years old, Roy had devoted 14 relentless years to Army intelligence, a counter-terrorism specialist with an almost preternatural gift for extraction and analysis. His uncanny ability to weave seemingly disparate threads of intelligence into a coherent tapestry had earned him the moniker, the Bloodhound, among his unit. Now that same analytical mind was meticulously piecing together the increasingly unsettling puzzle of his wife's behavior. During his last leave, a mere 6 months prior, a foreign scent, a man's cologne, had lingered in their bathroom. Bridget had brushed it off, a casual dismissal about a department store sample. Then there were the restaurant receipts, from towns an hour's drive away, places she'd never once mentioned. Her explanations, when pressed, involved girls' nights out with colleagues he'd never heard her speak of before. "You're paranoid, Roy," she'd accused, her voice sharp. "That's what happens when you spend your life hunting enemies." Perhaps she was right. 14 years of chasing shadows, of dissecting motives, had indeed sharpened his inherent suspicion. Yet an insidious unease gnawed at Roy, a chilling certainty that something was profoundly wrong at home while he fought a war that wasn't his own. Tonight's mission: to extract critical intelligence from a suspected arms trafficker in a remote village. As Roy geared up, his satellite phone vibrated, a text from Bridget. "Don't call tonight. Taking the kids to Mom's, bad signal there." Her mother lived in the heart of Richmond, where cell service was flawless, another lie. 3 days later, Roy intercepted communications that pinpointed the elusive location of a high-value insurgent leader. The ensuing raid was a resounding success, earning Roy a commendation. But while his team celebrated their victory, he retreated to the sterile confines of his barracks. He opened the home security app on his tablet, the one Bridget didn't know he'd installed before his deployment. The bedroom camera's feed flickered to life, revealing a man's jacket draped carelessly over his reading chair. At 2:14 a.m. Virginia time, Bridget entered the frame with a man Roy had never seen. They laughed, their voices hushed, intimate, as they sipped wine, his special occasion wine, from their wedding crystal. Roy watched, his face a mask of stone as the stranger kissed his wife. He did not flinch away as they moved toward the bed, his bed. Instead, he recorded every damning second. His tactical mind, cold and precise, was already formulating the most critical intelligence operation of his life. When his commanding officer offered Roy leave after the successful mission, he declined. "I need to prepare first, sir," he stated, his voice utterly devoid of emotion. "The enemy believes they have the advantage. I intend to disabuse them of that notion." Chapter 2. Gathering Intelligence. "Are you certain about this, old friend?" Lewis Frost, Roy's closest confidant in the unit and a communications specialist, looked deeply troubled, his brow furrowed as he helped Roy set up secure channels on his personal devices. "I don't make accusations without evidence," Roy replied, his voice flat, as he verified the encrypted file transfer. "That's not how we operate." Lewis let out a low whistle. "The Bloodhound turning his skills on his own home. Never thought I'd live to see the day." "Neither did I," Roy admitted. the words a bitter taste on his tongue. Over the next 8 relentless weeks, even as he performed his demanding duties, Roy orchestrated a clandestine investigation into his own life. He remotely accessed their joint bank accounts, cell phone records, and the meticulously placed home security footage. He configured algorithms to detect patterns, hotel bills, unusual restaurant tabs, unexplained gaps in time. The evidence, chilling and irrefutable, began to mount. The man was identified as Perry Wexler, a pharmaceutical sales representative who had moved into their neighborhood 11 months prior, shortly after Roy's second deployment had begun. According to Facebook, Wexler had seamlessly integrated into the community, volunteering at the same school fundraisers as Bridget and frequenting the same gym. Their affair, Roy deduced, had begun approximately 7 months ago, coinciding with Bridget's sudden, fervent interest in fitness and suspiciously late book club meetings. The home security cameras, a silent testament to his foresight, revealed Wexler had been in their house at least 36 times. Sometimes when the children were at school, sometimes late at night, long after they were tucked away, sound asleep upstairs. Most disturbing of all to Roy were the recorded conversations, chilling snippets of their shared future. Roy will be deployed for another 4 months, Bridget's voice devoid of warmth whispered as she nestled against Perry in Roy's own reading chair. After this divorce with his military record, he'll be lucky to get monthly visitation. The courts always favor the mother. "Are you sure about that, honey?" Perry murmured, caressing her hand. "Divorcing a war hero won't make you popular around here." "He's no hero to me," Bridget retorted, a chilling iciness in her tone. "He chose the army over us years ago. Besides, we've covered our tracks. He'll never know about us until I'm ready to tell him." The final crushing blow came when Roy uncovered text messages detailing Perry's plan to move into the house post-divorce, the very home Roy had purchased with his combat pay and family separation allowance. What Bridget and Perry didn't know was that Roy's top-secret clearance and specialized training granted him access to resources far beyond the reach of ordinary civilians. His intelligence-gathering network expanded, and what he unearthed about Perry Wexler sent a cold dread through his veins. Perry was not merely a pharmaceutical representative. His records contained discrepancies, inconsistencies that Roy recognized from his counterintelligence work. Hallmarks of a fabricated identity. More alarming were the large cash deposits into offshore accounts linked to aliases, details Roy uncovered through access to restricted military databases. When Roy finally laid bare the full terrifying scope of his findings to Lewis, his friend's face paled. "This isn't just an affair," Lewis whispered, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "This guy is using your wife to gain access to something valuable." "Not just my wife," Roy replied, his voice barely a whisper as he closed his laptop. "My children, my home, my life. And I believe he's connected to the same networks we've been tracking out here." "Good God, Roy, that would mean this isn't just about a cheating spouse. This is a matter of national security." Chapter 3. The Enemy Within. Roy requested emergency leave 2 weeks ahead of his scheduled return, citing a family crisis. Technically, it wasn't a lie. "Donovan, you have 30 days, Colonel Barrett informed him, his voice grim. "But given what you've revealed about potential domestic security threats, I'm authorizing continued access to certain resources. This remains off the books, understood?" "Understood, sir." "Thank you." "And Roy," the colonel added, his voice softening ever so slightly, "whatever your wife's involvement, willing or unwitting, remember your training. Gather facts, verify, then act. Don't let emotion cloud your judgment." Roy touched down at Dulles International Airport at 3:42 p.m. on a Tuesday, the sky weeping a steady rain. He didn't call Bridget. Instead, he checked into a nondescript motel 20 miles from his home, establishing his forward operating base. The next 48 hours were a blur of physical surveillance, planting additional tracking devices and coordinating with trusted military contacts. What he uncovered confirmed his darkest suspicions. Perry Wexler was, in fact, Pavel Resnick, a mid-level operator for an international organization specializing in the theft of military intelligence. His technique was chillingly simple yet devastatingly effective. identify high-clearance military personnel, research their family situations, then target vulnerable spouses during deployments. Roy wasn't the first. 3 other service members had been similarly compromised over the past 5 years, each case ending in divorce, with the operator maintaining a relationship with the ex-wife to remain near the children, who could innocently reveal information overheard from their fathers. On the 3rd day, Roy finally drove home, timing his arrival for when the children would be there, but Bridget would still be at her part-time administrative job. Max opened the door, his eyes wide with shock before he launched himself into his father's arms. "Dad, you're early." "Surprise, change in deployment." Roy lied smoothly, holding his son tight. "Where's your sister, buddy?" Lily, thundering down the stairs, nearly knocked Roy off his feet with the force of her embrace. Her eyes were moist with unshed tears. "I missed you so much." For a fleeting moment, Roy allowed himself to be simply a father, reunited with his children. They spoke excitedly over each other, showing him school projects and recounting stories as he prepared snacks in the kitchen, the very kitchen where he'd watched Bridget and Perry prepare intimate dinners via his surveillance camera. "Hey, do you know Mom's friend, Mr. Perry?" Max asked innocently. "He comes over a lot. He's teaching me how to throw a curveball." Roy maintained his smile with military discipline. "Is that right? What else does Mr. Perry do when he comes over?" The children's innocent answers confirmed everything. Perry had systematically built a relationship with them, asking seemingly casual questions about Roy's work, his deployments, even the security systems he used. "Dad, are you okay?" Lily asked, noticing the subtle hardening of his features. Roy forced his expression to soften. "Just tired from the trip, sweetheart." He checked his watch. "Listen, I've got a surprise. How about we go get some ice cream before Mom gets home? I want to hear all about school." He drove the children for ice cream, then to a movie, documenting their time together with photos and in video. When they returned home, Bridget's car was in the driveway next to an unfamiliar Audi. "Whose car is that?" Roy asked casually. "It's Mr. Perry's," Lily said. "He must be helping Mom with the broken shower again." Roy's jaw tightened for a fraction of a second before he relaxed it. "Why don't you two go play in the backyard for a few minutes? I want to surprise Mom." He entered the house silently, his years of tactical training evident in his noiseless movements. He heard them before he saw them: Bridget's laughter from the kitchen, a man's indistinct reply. Roy began recording video on his phone as he approached. "The separation agreement looks good," Perry's voice carried clearly. "Once that's filed, we'll go for full custody based on his prolonged absences and the psychological impact of his work. The military won't fight it, it's bad PR." "And the house?" Bridget asked. "As long as we can show you need it for the kids' stability, it's practically guaranteed. Military courts are predictable that way." Roy stepped into the kitchen doorway. "Is that right?" The shock on Bridget's face would have been satisfying had the situation not been so dire. Perry recovered faster, extending a hand with a practiced smile. "You must be Roy. I've heard so much about you. Perry Wexler." Roy ignored the outstretched hand. "Interesting. I've heard a few things about you too, Pavel." Perry's smile faltered for a mere microsecond, long enough for Roy to know he'd hit his mark. "Roy, why didn't you call?" Bridget stammered, her voice thin. "Perry's just a friend who was helping with some house repairs while you were gone." "Is that what you call it?" Roy's voice remained ominously calm. "The children are outside. We're going to have a civilized conversation before them. Then I'll take them to dinner, and when we return, I expect both of you to be gone." "This is my house," Bridget protested. "Technically, it's our house," Roy corrected her. "And I have compelling evidence that might interest both military intelligence and the FBI regarding your friend's activities." Perry's eyes narrowed. "You're confused, soldier. Jet lag can do that. 3 deployments, 14 years of service, and specialized intelligence training can also do interesting things," Roy countered calmly. "Like teaching you to recognize patterns, trace financial transactions, connect the dots." He turned to Bridget. "File for divorce if you wish, that's your right. But understand what you've involved yourself in before you go any further." "Are you threatening me?" Bridget demanded. No, I'm providing you with information. What you choose to do with it is your choice. Roy walked toward the back door. Kids, let's go to Freddy's for dinner. As he exited with his children, Roy sent a pre-composed message to Colonel Barrett. Confirmation on Resnick, proceeding to Phase 2. Chapter 4. Initial Moves. The following weeks unfolded like a tense game of chess. Just 2 days after his return, Roy received the divorce papers citing irreconcilable differences. Bridget's lawyer, Veronica Slate, a predatory divorce attorney known for targeting service members, demanded the family home, sole custody of the children, and a staggering 70% of Roy's military pension. Roy enlisted Franklin Dela Cruz, a former Judge Advocate General's Corps officer who specialized in defending service members' rights. After reviewing Roy's meticulously gathered evidence, Franklin's weathered face creased with concern. This goes beyond a simple divorce case, he stated in his austere office. If your intelligence on Perry Wexler is accurate, your wife may be unwittingly involved in espionage. I believe she's unwitting, Roy conceded. Manipulated, certainly, but legally complicit. That's what I need to determine. And some of the evidence you've gathered might be inadmissible in family court, given how it was obtained. Roy nodded. I know. That's why we need parallel paths, one for family court, one for the federal investigation. Franklin leaned back. You want to bait them out, use the divorce proceedings as a lure? Exactly. They believe I'm just a desperate husband fighting for his children. Let them think that while we build the real case. The first hearing was set for September 15. During that month, Roy moved into a small apartment but exercised his legal right to equal time with the children. The kids were confused and upset by the sudden shifts, especially when Bridget began allowing Perry to stay overnight. Why does Mom let Mr. Perry sleep over when you can't live with us anymore? Max asked during one weekend visit. Sometimes adults make complicated decisions, Roy answered carefully. But I want you to know none of this is your fault, and I'm going to make sure both of you are taken care of. In private, Roy continued his investigation with Colonel Barrett's unofficial blessing. He coordinated with a small team of military intelligence specialists who helped track Perry's movements and communications. What they uncovered was chilling. Perry had targeted 3 other military families before the Donovans, using the exact same methodology each time. He preys on families where the service member has access to classified intelligence, explained Captain Morales, a cybersecurity specialist assisting Roy off the books. He ingratiates himself with the spouse, orchestrates a divorce, and then maintains access to the children as a stepfather figure. Kids talk, especially to adults they trust. They repeat things they've heard, show things they've found. It's insidious and effective, Roy added grimly. Have we identified his handler yet? Working on it. We've traced communications to a shell company in Delaware, which we believe is a front. But here's the kicker. Large sums of money are being transferred to accounts accessible to your wife. Roy's expression darkened. Show me. The financial trail revealed Bridget had recently opened a private account into which significant funds were flowing, funds that correlated precisely with Roy's deployment schedule and classified clearance updates. The pattern pointed to payment for specific intelligence milestones. She's not just being manipulated, Roy realized, a cold wave washing over him. She's being paid. The betrayal cut deeper than the affair itself. Roy had dedicated his life to protecting his country, only to discover the enemy sleeping in his bed, raising his children, all while monetizing any information they could glean from his home, his personal effects, and potentially his children's. Innocent chatter. When Roy confronted Bridget about the money during a custody exchange, her reaction confirmed his suspicions. You're spying on my private accounts? She hissed, casting a nervous glance toward where Perry waited in his car. That's illegal. Is it more or less illegal than accepting payments from foreign nationals in exchange for access to military intelligence? Roy asked softly. Because that's what the evidence suggests, Bridget. You're insane, she spat back, but her voice trembled. Perry's a pharmaceutical rep. The money's from investments he's helping me make. Investments that coincidentally align with my deployment dates and security clearance changes. Roy leaned closer. Think very carefully about what you've involved yourself in for the sake of the children, if not for yourself. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered in Bridget's eyes. Then Perry honked, and her expression hardened again. The judge will hear all about your paranoid accusations and surveillance, she vowed. Enjoy your visits while they last. As September 15 drew near, the legal battle escalated. Veronica Slate filed emergency motions, claiming Roy was unstable and potentially dangerous due to PTSD, a condition he had never been diagnosed with. The court ordered psychological evaluations for both parents. Meanwhile, the parallel federal investigation accelerated as Roy's military contacts uncovered ties between Perry Wexler, Pavel Resnick, and known foreign intelligence networks. The evidence was mounting, but they needed to catch him red-handed, receiving or transmitting classified information. 3 days before the custody hearing, Roy received an encrypted message from Colonel Barrett, handler identified, proceeding to defend, maintain cover until confirmed. That evening, as Roy cooked dinner for the children during his parenting time, Max asked a question that turned his blood to ice. Dad, is it bad if I told Mr. Perry about your special computer when he asked where you kept your work stuff? Roy kept his voice calm. What exactly did you tell him, buddy? Just that you have a locked cabinet in your study where you put your special laptop when you come home from deployments. He said he wanted to surprise you. Roy hugged his son. That's not bad at all. You didn't do anything wrong. But inside, his tactical mind worked feverishly. The locked cabinet contained his biometric access secure laptop, nothing Perry could easily crack. But the attempt indicated they were getting desperate. That night, after returning the children to Bridget, Roy contacted Franklin. We need to accelerate. They're making direct attempts to access classified systems now. The hearing is in 3 days, Franklin reminded him. We need Judge Holbrook to understand the full picture. Not the full picture, Roy corrected. Just enough to protect the children while we set the trap. I've prepared something for court, something that will change everything. Chapter 5. The Courtroom Battlefield. The family courthouse buzzed with a low hum of activity on the morning of September 15. Roy arrived early, clad in his dress military uniform, adorned with every earned medal, a deliberate choice his attorney had advised against. They'll accuse you of trying to sway the court, Franklin had warned. I'm not hiding who I am or what I've sacrificed, Roy had replied, his voice firm. Let them dare to attack my service if they choose. Bridget arrived with Perry and her own attorney, radiating an unsettling confidence in an expensive suit Roy had never seen her wear. The contrast was stark, almost theatrical. Roy in his uniform, embodying duty and sacrifice, Bridget and Perry in their designer attire, embodying a new life built upon deceit. Veronica Slate immediately objected to Roy's attire. Your Honor, Sergeant Donovan is clearly attempting to unduly influence the court with this military theater. Judge Alberta Holbrook, a stern woman in her 60s with a reputation for impartiality, peered over her spectacles. Ms. Slate, service members are entitled to wear their uniforms in court. Objection overruled. The initial proceedings followed a predictable script. Bridget's attorney painted Roy as an absent father whose dangerous profession and frequent deployments rendered him unfit for significant custody. She emphasized Roy's paranoid behavior upon returning home, including his alleged surveillance of Bridget and Perry and the leveling of unsubstantiated accusations. Mrs. Donovan has been the primary caregiver throughout the children's lives, while Sergeant Donovan chose repeated overseas deployments, Veronica asserted, her voice dripping with implication. Now he returns and expects to disrupt the stable environment she has cultivated. Furthermore, his disturbing accusations against Mr. Wexler, a respected pharmaceutical representative who has been a positive influence in these children's lives, demonstrate his instability. When it was Franklin's turn, he took a different tack than Roy had anticipated. Your Honor, my client has indeed served 3 combat tours, defending the very freedoms that allow us to be in this courtroom today. During those deployments, he continued to support his family financially and emotionally as best he could from thousands of miles away. What he did not anticipate was returning home to find his wife had not only violated her marital vows, but had potentially compromised national security in the process. Veronica Slate immediately objected, her voice sharp. "These outrageous accusations have no place in a custody hearing." "I am inclined to agree, counsel," Judge Holbrook said to Franklin, her tone crisp. "Unless you have evidence relevant to the well-being of these children, I suggest you focus on custody factors." "The evidence is directly relevant to the children's well-being, Your Honor," Franklin replied calmly, "because Mr. Wexler, whom Mrs. Donovan is asking the court to permit to live in the family home with the children, is not who he claims to be." A ripple went through the courtroom as Franklin presented documents detailing inconsistencies in Perry's identity and employment history. He carefully avoided mentioning the classified information Roy had accessed, focusing instead on publicly available records and legally obtained information that raised serious questions about Perry's character and intentions. Bridget looked increasingly uncomfortable, whispering desperately to her attorney, while Perry maintained a practiced dismissive smirk. When Veronica cross-examined Roy, she went for the jugular. "Sergeant Donovan, isn't it true that you installed surveillance equipment in the family home without your wife's knowledge or consent?" "I installed a security system with cameras in common areas before my third deployment," Roy answered truthfully, "to protect the family. My wife was aware of the system." "And you used that system to spy on her?" "I used it to protect my home and family while serving our country." "Please answer the question directly, Sergeant. Did you use it to spy on her?" "I reviewed security footage when I had concerns about unknown individuals having access to my home. That is what security systems are for." Veronica shifted tactics. "Isn't it true that your PTSD and combat experience have made you paranoid and prone to seeing threats where none exist?" "I have never been diagnosed with PTSD," Roy stated firmly. "And my threat assessment training is, in fact, highly relevant here." "Relevant how? Do you consider your wife a threat, Sergeant?" Roy looked directly at Bridget. "I consider anyone who compromises the well-being of my children a threat, counsel." The morning's testimonies concluded with both sides presenting character witnesses. Roy's commanding officers attested to his integrity and dedication, while Bridget brought forth neighbors and school staff who affirmed her active involvement in the children's lives. After the lunch recess, Judge Holbrook addressed both parties. "I have reviewed the preliminary evidence and testimonies. While I am disturbed by Sergeant Donovan's concerns regarding Mr. Wexler, I do not see sufficient evidence to sway a custody determination at this time." She turned to Bridget. "Mrs. Donovan, the court acknowledges your role as primary caregiver, but also recognizes Sergeant Donovan's right to a meaningful relationship with his children despite his military obligations." To Roy, "Sergeant, your service is commendable, but this court must prioritize the children's need for stability." The judge's preliminary comments suggested she was leaning towards granting Bridget primary physical custody with generous visitation rights for Roy, exactly what Bridget and Perry wanted, and exactly what Roy had anticipated. "Before I render my decision," Judge Holbrook continued, "does either party have anything further to add?" This was the moment Roy had waited for. He turned to Franklin, who gave him a barely perceptible nod. "Your Honor," Roy said, rising to his feet, "I have one document I would like to submit to the court." He approached the bench with a single sheet of paper, the culmination of months of intelligence work, verified by military intelligence and the FBI. The document contained no classified information, only the findings of their investigation into Perry Wexler Pavel Resnick, including his ties to foreign intelligence operations and the financial trail linking him to Bridget. Judge Holbrook's eyes widened as she read. She looked up at Roy, then at Perry and Bridget, her expression shifting from judicial neutrality to alarm. "Nobody move," she ordered sharply. "Bailiff, secure these doors immediately and clear this courtroom." Perry abruptly stood. "This is ridiculous. I'm not subject to these proceedings." "Sir, sit down immediately," the judge commanded. Bridget turned to Perry in confusion. "What's happening? What did he give her?" The courtroom doors swung open to admit 4 military police officers in full tactical gear, accompanied by 2 FBI agents in suits. "Pavel Resnick," the lead FBI agent announced, "you are under arrest for espionage against the United States and acting as an unregistered foreign agent." Bridget's attorney dropped her papers in shock as the MPs moved purposefully toward Perry, who was frantically searching for an escape route. Finding none, he lunged toward Bridget. "Tell them it's a mistake! Tell them!" 2 MPs intercepted him before he could reach her, expertly and swiftly immobilizing him as the FBI agents read him his rights. Bridget stood frozen, her face drained of color as the full weight of the situation crashed down upon her. "Mrs. Donovan," the second FBI agent said, approaching her, "we're going to need you to come with us as well for questioning regarding your involvement in this matter." "I don't understand," Bridget whispered, her eyes wide and desperate as they met Roy's. "What is this?" Roy held her gaze steadily. "These are the consequences of choices, Bridget. Yours and mine." Judge Holbrook pounded her gavel. "This custody hearing is adjourned until the conclusion of the federal investigation. Sergeant Donovan, given these extraordinary circumstances, I am granting you emergency temporary custody of the children. We will reconvene when the situation becomes clear." As the MPs escorted Perry away, he met Roy's gaze one last time. The mask of Perry Wexler had completely fallen, revealing the cold calculation of Pavel Resnick. In that moment, Roy saw what his children had been living with, a predator who used them as pawns in a dangerous game. Outside the courtroom, Colonel Barrett waited. "Clean operation, Donovan. Appreciate your support, sir." "The children are safe at school. I'll pick them up myself." The colonel nodded. "This isn't over. His network is extensive. The children will need protection until we've cleared the entire cell." "Understood, sir." Roy straightened, the soldier in him fully reasserted. "I will protect what's mine." Chapter 6. Collateral Damage. The fallout from the courtroom revelation was swift and unforgiving. Perry's arrest exploded across national headlines. "Foreign agent arrested in military espionage case." Media vans staked out the Donovan home, forcing Roy to temporarily relocate with the children to a secure military facility. Bridget had not been arrested that day, but she had been taken in for extensive questioning. The FBI's investigation revealed she had received over $200,000 in payments, disguised as consulting fees and investment returns, all correlating with key dates in Roy's deployment schedule and security clearance updates. 2 weeks after the courtroom confrontation, Roy met with FBI Special Agent Diana Walsh to review the findings. "We believe your wife was a knowing participant, Sergeant Donovan," Walsh explained, showing him transaction records laid out on a table. "The pattern of payments aligns too precisely with your military activities to be coincidental. However, we do not believe she fully understood the scope of Resnick's operation." "What does not fully understood mean?" "It means she likely knew she was being paid for providing access to your belongings, your schedule, and information about your work. She probably convinced herself it was corporate espionage, not treason." Walsh closed the file. "She's cooperating now, claiming Resnick manipulated her. That may mitigate her charges, but she's still facing significant time." Roy absorbed this with the same collected demeanor that had become his trademark, but internally he grappled with conflicting emotions. The betrayal was absolute, not just of their marriage vows, but of everything he stood for. The children were devastated. Explaining their mother's absence required agonizing conversations no parent should ever have to endure. "Is Mommy a bad person?" Lily asked one night, her tiny voice trembling. Roy chose his words carefully. "Your mom made some very bad choices that hurt a lot of people, but she still loves you." "But she helped a bad man," Max said, demonstrating the black-and-white moral certainty of youth. "Perry was trying to hurt you and the other soldiers." "People are complicated, son. They can make terrible mistakes without being terrible people." Even as he said it, Roy wasn't sure he entirely believed it himself. The divorce proceedings resumed with Bridget in a drastically weakened position. Her attorney had dropped the case, unwilling to be associated with an espionage scandal. Her parents, devastated by their daughter's actions, still defended her, retaining new counsel specializing in both criminal defense and family law. At the rescheduled hearing, Bridget appeared in prison garb, having been denied bail due to flight risk. Gone was the confident, stylish woman who had demanded the house in sole custody. In her place sat a hollow-eyed defendant facing not only divorce but federal charges. Judge Holbrook, who had presided over the initial hearing, recused herself due to her being a witness in the federal case. A new judge, Raymond Ortiz, approached the case with fresh eyes. "These are exceptional circumstances," he noted in preliminary remarks. "The court must separate the criminal charges from the custody matters, while acknowledging their unavoidable impact." Bridget's new attorney, Martin Greenberg, argued that despite her legal troubles, Bridget deserved to maintain a relationship with her children. "Your Honor, Mrs. Donovan made serious errors in judgment, but her love for her children is genuine. We ask the court to consider supervised visitation while her criminal case proceeds," Franklin Dela Cruz countered, presenting evidence of Bridget's willingness to use the children to extract information about Roy's work. Records show Mrs. Donovan actively encouraged the children to observe their father's work habits and report back to her and Mr. Resnick. She placed her children in the dangerous position of being unwitting intelligence assets. This demonstrates a fundamental inability to protect their well-being. The most damaging evidence came from Max himself, who testified via closed-circuit television to spare him further trauma. "Mommy gave me special treats when I told her about Daddy's work stuff," he explained nervously. "She said it was a game to see what I could remember about Daddy's computer and the phone calls he made." Lily's therapist testified that the little girl was now suffering from anxiety and attachment issues, brought on by the sudden loss of her mother and the revelation that Mr. Perry had been using her to hurt her father. Judge Ortiz's ruling was definitive. Roy was granted full legal and physical custody, with Bridget granted monthly supervised visitation only after she underwent psychological evaluations and parenting courses. The family home was awarded to Roy along with the majority of their shared assets. Bridget, facing mounting legal fees and potential restitution, received only her personal belongings and a small portion of her savings that could not be traced to illicit payments. As for Perry Pavel, he faced multiple federal charges carrying potential life sentences. The intelligence network Roy had helped expose led to 15 additional arrests across 3 states, dismantling a major foreign intelligence operation that had targeted military personnel for nearly a decade. 6 weeks after the arrests, Roy was called to a classified briefing at the Pentagon. Colonel Barrett and several high-ranking intelligence officials thanked him for his service and the sacrifice of his personal life to national security. "Your actions saved countless lives and protected vital military intelligence," General Harrington, Director of Military Intelligence, told him. "The country owes you a debt it can never repay." "I was just doing my job, sir," Roy replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "Protecting what matters." "We'd like you to continue that job," the general said. "Your unique experience makes you invaluable to our counterintelligence efforts. We're offering you a promotion and a position in a newly formed unit focused on military family security. You would help identify and prevent the very type of operation that targeted your family." Roy considered the offer respectfully. "Sir, my children need stability now. They've lost their mother to federal prison. They need a present father." "Understood, Sergeant. That's why this position involves no deployments, is based here in Virginia, mostly regular hours." The general pushed a folder across the table. "Review the details. This work will protect other military families from what yours endured." That evening, Roy sat on the back porch of the family home, now solely his and the children's, considering the proposal. The position would allow him to continue serving while remaining close to Max and Lily. More importantly, it would give meaning to the personal tragedy they had endured. As he contemplated the future, his secure phone vibrated with a message from Agent Walsh. "Resnick is talking. Claims operation is larger than we thought. More sleepers embedded in military communities. Can you come in tomorrow?" Roy replied. "Be there, 0900. Inside, he could hear Lily's laughter at something Max had said, a sound that had been far too rare in recent months. Their resilience astonished him. Despite everything, they were healing, adapting, finding moments of joy. He wouldn't let what happened to them happen to another military family. The battlefield had changed, but his mission remained the same: to protect what matters at any cost. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. A year after the courtroom revelation, Roy stood at the kitchen counter scanning school permission slips while his children ate breakfast. Their morning routine had found its rhythm: lunches packed, backpacks checked, a carefully maintained stability that had become their lifeline. "Dad, I need you to sign this for the Science Museum trip," Max said, sliding a form across the table. At 13, he'd shot up 2 inches in the past year and had recently joined his school's junior ROTC program. "Got it. Lily, do you have your math homework done?" Roy asked, reviewing the permission slip before signing. Lily, now 10 years old, nodded, finishing her cereal. The therapy sessions had helped immensely. Her anxiety attacks had lessened, though she still slept with her door ajar and occasionally crawled into Roy's bed after nightmares. "Can we visit Mom this weekend?" Max asked quietly, not meeting Roy's eyes. Roy maintained a neutral expression, though the question still brought a complex ripple of emotions. "She has a slot for Saturday at 11 a.m., same as always." The monthly visits to the Federal Correctional Institution, where Bridget was serving an 8-year sentence, had become part of their routine, though not one Roy looked forward to. Bridget had taken a plea deal, admitting guilt to lesser charges of failing to register as a foreign agent and wire fraud. In return, she had provided extensive information on Resnick's network. "I don't want to go this time," Lily said, staring into her cereal bowl. "That's your choice, sweetheart," Roy assured her. "You never have to go if you don't want to." Max looked conflicted. "If Lily doesn't go, maybe I should just stay with her." "I can ask Mrs. Harding to stay with Lily if you want to go," Roy offered, referring to Lewis's wife, who had become a valuable anchor for the family. Before Max could reply, Roy's secure phone vibrated, the line dedicated to his new role with the Military Family Security Unit. The text was from Agent Walsh. "Resnick, requesting a meeting, says he has critical intel, specifically asked for you." Roy's jaw clenched involuntarily. He hadn't seen Perry Pavel since the courthouse, though he'd reviewed countless transcripts of his interrogations. The man was serving multiple life sentences in a federal supermax facility, constantly trading information for minor privileges. "Everything okay, Dad?" Max asked, noticing his expression. Roy forced a reassuring smile. "Just work stuff. Finish up or you'll miss the bus." After seeing the children off, Roy drove to the secure facility where the MFSU operated. In the years since its inception, they had identified and neutralized 3 additional foreign intelligence operations targeting military families. Roy's personal experience made him uniquely effective at spotting the warning signs and patterns others might miss. Colonel Barrett, now Brigadier General Barrett, and the unit's director waited in the conference room with Agent Walsh. "He's being transported from Colorado," Barrett explained. "Arriving at 2 p.m., claims he has actionable intel on sleeper agents we haven't identified yet." "Why now?" Roy asked. "And why me specifically?" Walsh shrugged. "Says he'll only talk to you. Could be genuine, could be head games. You know how he operates." "I know," Roy agreed grimly, "which is why I don't trust it." Barrett leaned forward. "You don't have to take the meeting, Donovan. You've given enough already." Roy considered declining. His life was finally stable, the children were healing, his work was meaningful and allowed him to be the father they needed. Why stir up old wounds? But the thought of other families, other children targeted by operations like the one that had shattered his own marriage, hardened his resolve. "I'll take the meeting, but on my terms, not his." The secure interrogation room was stark by design. A metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, reinforced walls, and constant video surveillance. Roy waited, reviewing the file one last time. When the door opened, Pavel Resnick, formerly known as Perry Wexler, entered in shackles, flanked by 2 guards. A year in prison had aged him. His once charming smile had been replaced by a gaunt sharpness, his designer clothes by a prison jumpsuit. "Staff Sergeant Donovan," Resnick greeted him, a faint accent he'd never used as Perry Wexler now discernible. "Or is it Lieutenant now? I hear you got a promotion." "Let's skip the pleasantries," Roy said, his voice flat. "You requested this meeting. Speak." Resnick studied him with calculating eyes. How are the children? Max must be in middle school now, and little Lily still afraid of thunderstorms? Roy's expression remained impassive, though internally his anger flared at Resnick's casual mention of his children. You forfeited the privilege of knowing anything about my family. This meeting ends now if you don't provide actionable intelligence. Resnick smiled thinly. Always the professional. That's why they never suspected you were targeting them. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. There's an operation in Norfolk, Naval Intelligence, 3 active agents, targeting the Harrison family, a lieutenant commander in submarine technology. Roy made notes, giving no indication if he found the information valuable. Names? It would be too easy. Resnick's eyes gleamed with familiar manipulation. I want something in return. You're not in a position to bargain. I am precisely in a position to bargain. I provide information, I get compensated. That is how this works. What do you want? Roy asked, though he already anticipated the answer. Contact with Bridget. Roy's pen paused for a fraction of a second on the paper. Not possible. Only letters, monitored, censored, with whatever security protocols you deem necessary. Resnick leaned back. We were in love, you know. Not all of it was an operation. Spare me, Roy said dryly. You targeted her because of my security clearance. The psychological assessment confirmed she was susceptible to flattery and material excess. Standard procedure for your handlers. Is that what you tell yourself? Resnick challenged. That she couldn't possibly have fallen for someone else. That it had to be manipulation. Roy recognized the attempt at psychological warfare and refused to engage. You have nothing of value. This meeting is over. As he stood to leave, Resnick spoke quickly. Michael Turner, currently working as a sailing instructor at the Norfolk Marina, gives private lessons to the Harrisons' teenage daughters regularly. A background check will show discrepancies if you know where to look. Roy paused, then sat back down. Keep talking. For the next hour, Resnick provided granular details about the Norfolk operation and 2 others in San Diego and Pensacola. The intelligence was specific, verifiable, and potentially invaluable. Why are you giving this up now? Roy finally asked. Resnick shrugged. My former employers attempted to liquidate me last month. A prison transfer ambush failed, obviously, but the message was clear. My usefulness to them has ended, so my loyalty has shifted accordingly. And the letters to Bridget? We shared something real, despite what you think. A flicker of what seemed like genuine emotion crossed Resnick's eyes. She deserves to know I haven't abandoned her. Roy gathered his notes. I will verify this information. If it proves accurate, I will recommend your request be considered. No promises. As Roy turned to leave, Resnick called out, She never stopped loving you, you know. Even with me, she spoke of you, the hero, the loyal soldier. She just couldn't live with the loneliness anymore. Roy paused at the door, then exited without a reply. He wouldn't give Resnick the satisfaction of seeing any reaction. Later that evening, after preliminary verification confirmed the veracity of Resnick's intelligence, Roy sat on his back porch watching Max and Lily play with the neighbor's dog in the yard. Walsh called to inform him that Michael Turner had been put under surveillance, and evidence was already emerging to corroborate Resnick's claims. We'll need you in Norfolk tomorrow, she said. The Harrison daughters have lessons scheduled with Turner. I'll be there, Roy replied, after I drop the kids at school. Now, watching his children's innocent play, Roy reflected on Resnick's request. The thought of the man communicating with Bridget disgusted him. Yet withholding valuable intelligence out of personal vengeance was not who Roy was, nor who he wanted to be. His phone vibrated with a message from Bridget's prison account. The monitored system allowed for limited communication, primarily related to the children. Max said he might not come on Saturday. Is everything okay? Roy stared at the message, remembering the woman he had married, the mother of his children, before Resnick and his handlers had identified and exploited her vulnerabilities. The woman who, according to her psychological assessment, had convinced herself that the information she provided wasn't truly harmful, merely corporate competition. He typed a reply. He's conflicted. It's his choice. Lily definitely won't be coming this month. A response came quickly. I understand. Thank you for not turning them against me completely. You could have. Roy didn't reply. The truth was more complex than Bridget could ever comprehend. He had never tried to turn the children against her despite the pain she had inflicted. Not because he had forgiven her, he hadn't, and doubted he ever would, but because the children needed to process their own feelings without his influence. "Dad, come play!" Lily called from the yard, waving excitedly. Roy slipped his phone into his pocket and joined his children, pushing thoughts of Resnick, Bridget, and national security to the back of his mind for a few precious hours. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats to neutralize, but tonight belonged to Max and Lily. Chapter 8. Broken Trust. 2 years had passed since the courtroom's harsh glare, and life had settled into what Roy's therapist termed the new normal. The children were thriving in school, their nightmares largely subdued. Roy's work at MFSU had expanded, encompassing training programs for military families, arming them with the knowledge to recognize and evade the insidious attacks of foreign agents. Bridget, meanwhile, had served 3 of her 8-year sentence, with the faint promise of early release dangling like a cruel mirage, contingent on continued cooperation. Her monthly visits with the children had grown more comfortable, though Roy still maintained a rigid distance, coordinating through prison officials and occasionally Mrs. Harding, who ferried the children when Roy's duties called him away. The Norfolk operation, unveiled by Resnick's damning testimony, had led to 5 arrests and thwarted a catastrophic intelligence breach. The subsequent information he'd provided proved equally invaluable, leading to a reluctant approval of his request for controlled correspondence with Bridget. Roy was informed but not consulted on this decision, a professional detachment that belied the personal tremor it sent through him. On a crisp October morning, Roy was poring over security protocols for an upcoming military family retreat when his secure phone shrieked. It was Walsh, her voice taut with urgency. "We need you at headquarters immediately. It's about Resnick." "What kind of problem?" Roy demanded, a cold dread already coiling in his gut. "One best discussed in person. It involves Bridget and the children." Roy's blood ran icy. "I'm on my way." At headquarters, he found not only Walsh but also General Barrett, the warden of Bridget's prison, and 2 FBI cybersecurity specialists. "What happened?" Roy bit out, his voice sharp. Walsh gestured to one of the specialists, who projected a series of messages onto the main screen. "These are the supposedly approved controlled letters exchanged between Resnick and your ex-wife over the past 8 months. Roy scanned them. Seemingly innocuous reminiscences, expressions of regret, discussions of literature and prison conditions. Nothing overtly alarming. "And these," the specialist continued, bringing up another set, "are the real messages we just uncovered. They were exchanging them through a sophisticated hidden channel embedded within the approved text." The decoded messages peeled back a far more sinister layer. Resnick and Bridget were communicating in intricate code, discussing not only their personal relationship but also Roy's ongoing work, his schedule, and most chillingly, details about the children. "How is this possible?" Roy managed, his voice strained, fighting to maintain composure. "Every message is supposed to be vetted." The warden looked profoundly uncomfortable. The encoding method was extremely complex. Steganographic techniques embedded within seemingly innocent phrases, triggered by specific word patterns. Our regular vetting protocols missed it. We only caught it thanks to a newly implemented AI-driven pattern recognition system. "Resnick was clever, highly trained," Walsh added, her gaze fixed on the screen. "And it appears he taught Bridget the encoding method through the approved letters, gradually building the system right under our noses." Roy's focus narrowed on one particular decoded message from Bridget. "Max mentioned ours new girl works in the nuclear program, need name and access level." She was using the visits to gather intelligence from the children, Roy realized, his voice dangerously quiet, a cold fury settling deep within him. "About me, about my work." No one contradicted him. The evidence was damning. General Barrett cleared his throat. We are immediately revoking all communication privileges for both of them. Bridget is being transferred to a higher security facility with no contact permitted except through legal counsel. Resnick loses all privileges earned through cooperation. What about the children? Roy asked, the words a raw whisper. That's partly why we called you, Walsh said softly. The content suggests Bridget was systematically questioning them during visits, especially Max, about your personal life and work details. Given your position, this represents a significant potential security compromise. The implication struck Roy like a physical blow. The monthly visits, which he had facilitated, believing them crucial for the children's emotional healing, had been weaponized. Bridget hadn't changed at all. She had merely adapted her methods. We need to interview the children, one of the FBI agents stated, his voice flat. Determine exactly what information may have been compromised. No, Roy stated firmly, his jaw clenched. They've been traumatized enough. I'll handle it. Donovan, General Barrett began, his tone unyielding. Protocol dictates. With all due respect, sir, these are my children. I know how to debrief them without causing further trauma. I'm trained in these techniques, and I understand precisely what information we need to assess the breach. After some deliberation, a compromise was reached. Roy would conduct the initial conversation with the children, recorded for security purposes, with a child psychologist present. Based on those findings, a decision would be made regarding any further investigation. That evening, Roy sat at the kitchen table with Max, now 14, and Lily, 11 years old. He had picked them up early from their after-school activities, knowing this conversation couldn't wait. I need to ask you both some important questions about your visits with Mom, he began gently, his voice carefully controlled. You're not in trouble, and Mom's not in trouble. We just need to understand some things. Max's expression instantly tightened, suspicion clouding his young face. What exactly? During your visits, does Mom ever ask you questions about me, about my work, or about people I know? Brother and sister exchanged a quick glance, one that confirmed Roy's fears before either spoke. Sometimes, Lily admitted, her voice small. She asks if you're happy, if you're dating anyone, normal mom stuff. Does she ask about specific people or about my job? Roy pressed, his gaze unwavering. Max stared down at the table, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. She asked a lot about Laura, wanted to know what she does on base. I just said she works with computers, 'cause that's all I know. Laura Phillips was a cybersecurity specialist at MFSU, whom Roy had been dating for about 6 months. Her work involved highly classified nuclear defense systems. What else, Max? Roy prodded softly, his heart sinking with each word. She asked if I ever saw your work papers or heard your phone calls. Max looked up, a raw guilt etched on his face. I told her about the safe in your office. I didn't think it was a big deal, just Mom being curious. Roy held his composure, despite the crushing weight settling in his chest. Did she ever ask you to look for anything specific or tell her about my schedule? Lily spoke up, her voice barely a whisper. She always wants to know when you're traveling. She says it's so she doesn't schedule calls when you're gone, but she writes it down every time. The conversation continued, unearthing a methodical pattern of intelligence gathering, cloaked in maternal concern. Both children had unwittingly provided information that, while seemingly innocent in isolation, could be pieced together to form a disturbing mosaic of Roy's work, movements, and associations. When they finished speaking, Roy faced the most difficult part. I need to tell you both something hard. Mom was sharing this information with Perry. What? How? Max demanded, his voice cracking, disbelief warring with anger. He's in prison. They were writing letters, and it turns out they were hiding secret messages within those letters. Lily's eyes welled with tears. But why? Mom said she was sorry about everything. She said Perry tricked her. Roy chose his next words with agonizing care. Sometimes people make choices that are hard for us to understand. Mom might still be confused about what's right and wrong when it comes to Perry. So we can't visit her anymore. Max finished, his expression hardening into something that painfully reminded Roy of himself. Not right now. She's being transferred to another facility. Once that's settled, we'll need to make some family decisions. Lily began to cry, a raw, gut-wrenching sob. I don't want to see her anyway. She's a liar, too. Roy wrapped his arms around his daughter, holding her as she wept. Over her head, he met Max's eyes. No longer a child's eyes, but those of a young man confronting adult betrayals for the second time in his short life. I'm sorry, Roy said simply, the words heavy with unspoken meaning. You both deserve better. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Roy sat in his home office, reviewing the video recording of their conversation. The recording would be provided to the FBI and military intelligence for assessment of the potential security breach. His secure phone vibrated with a message from Walsh. Bridget requesting urgent call with you, RE, children. Recommend denial. Roy stared at the message for a long moment. She had betrayed not just him, not just her country, but now her own children. Twice over, using them as unwitting intelligence assets, manipulating their love and trust. He typed out his response. Understood. Contact denied except through my attorney. As he set the phone down, he noticed a school assignment on Max's desk, an essay titled, Heroes in Our Lives. He picked it up, reading the first paragraph. My dad is a hero, but not just because he serves our country in the military. He's a hero because he protects people, even when it's hard, even when it hurts him. When everything fell apart with my mom, he made sure we knew it wasn't our fault. He built us a new life where we could feel safe again. That's what real heroes do. Roy carefully placed the paper back down, a complex array of emotions washing over him. Pride for his son's resilience, grief for the shattered fragments of his family, and a steely resolve to protect what remained. Tomorrow, he would begin the process of seeking to terminate Bridget's parental rights based on her continued criminal activity involving the children. It would be another painful battle, but he would not waver. Some betrayals could not be forgiven, and some risks could not be tolerated. The children had lost their mother twice, first to her affair with Resnick and now to her continued deception. Roy couldn't restore what was lost, but he could ensure they were never weaponized again. Chapter 9. The Bastion. 5 years had clawed their way past the courtroom's brutal unveiling. Roy, resplendent in his dress uniform, watched Max's high school graduation unfold before him. Now, at 19 years old, his son had blossomed into a young man of formidable character, academically brilliant, physically honed, and possessing a quiet strength that echoed Roy's own father. Beside him, Lily, a vibrant 16, meticulously recorded the ceremony on her phone. She had navigated the labyrinth of her early trauma through years of unwavering therapy, emerging a self-assured young woman with an insatiable hunger for cybersecurity, inspired, she'd often say, by witnessing her father's relentless work, safeguarding military families. And now, the principal's voice boomed, our valedictorian, Maxwell Donovan. A tidal wave of pride surged through Roy as Max strode to the podium. Neither child still bore their mother's surname, a legal metamorphosis finalized 3 years prior, when Bridget's parental rights were irrevocably severed following her conviction on additional charges of attempted espionage. My path to this podium was unconventional, Max began, his voice a steady, mature cadence. Many of you know fragments of my story, the headlines, the public record, but the most crucial lessons I learned were gleaned after the cameras had vanished, after the news cycles had faded. Roy listened as his son spoke with an eloquent grace about resilience, about integrity, about the profound power found in rebuilding. Not once did Max directly invoke his mother or the scandal that had shattered their family, yet his allusions to who could be trusted and the bedrock of truth spoke volumes. My father taught me that we are defined not by what happens to us, but by how we respond, Max continued. He showed me that protecting what matters sometimes demands difficult decisions, and that true strength lies in doing what is right, not what is easy. Later, as they celebrated in Max's favorite restaurant, Roy's secure phone vibrated with a news alert. Pavel Resnick, convicted spy, found dead in federal custody. Apparent suicide. Roy silently showed the phone to Laura, now his wife of 2 years, who merely raised an eyebrow in response. They both knew enough of intelligence operations to harbor a cynical doubt. wondering if Resnick's former handlers had finally reached him, tying up a loose end that had outlived its utility. "Everything all right, Dad?" Max asked, noticing the silent exchange. "Nothing that concerns us anymore," Roy replied, pocketing his phone. "Just business." That evening, as Max prepared for the military academy he would enter in the fall, following in his father's footsteps, yet choosing the Air Force's cybersecurity branch over Army intelligence, Roy received another alert. B. Donovan requests final communication via attorney, claims critical information on our network. Roy deleted the message without a flicker of response. Bridget had made similar claims 3 times over the past 5 years, each time offering tantalizing scraps of information in exchange for reduced restrictions or visitation rights. Each time the intelligence had proven minimal or outdated, while her motives remained nakedly manipulative. The children hadn't seen their mother in over 3 years, not since the exposure of her continued intelligence gathering through them. Max had completely severed ties, refusing all contact. Lily had maintained sporadic, monitored written communication until her 16th birthday, when she too decided to end contact. "Dad," Lily appeared in the doorway of his study. "Can we talk?" "Always." Roy cleared a space on his desk where he had been reviewing Max's academy papers. Lily shifted slightly. "Mom's lawyer emailed me. She wants to see me before I go to college next year. Says she has important things to tell me, things only in person." Roy maintained a neutral expression. "What do you think about it?" "I think she's still trying to manipulate us." Lily's voice was wise beyond her years. "But part of me wonders if I should just hear her out, just to finally close this chapter." "It's your decision, Lily. You're old enough to make it yourself." Roy chose his next words carefully. "But remember that closure doesn't always come from external sources. Sometimes we find it within ourselves." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "You never got closure with her, did you?" "I found my own version of it," Roy answered honestly, "by focusing on what I could control, building a secure home for you and Max, doing meaningful work, building a life founded on truth, not lies." "Do you ever regret how things turned out? Not forgiving her?" Roy considered the question gravely. "I have never regretted protecting you and Max. As for forgiveness, some betrayals cut too deep, touched too many innocents. Your mother betrayed not only me, she betrayed you, Max, her country, and ultimately herself. And that for me is unforgivable, yes. But your path is your own. Forgiveness isn't an obligation. It's a choice each person must make for themselves, based on their own values and boundaries." Lily was silent for a moment. "I think I'll decline the meeting. Not because I can't forgive her, but because I don't believe her motives have changed, and I won't be used again." Roy felt a profound mix of sadness and pride. Sadness that his daughter had been forced to learn such harsh lessons so early, pride in the wisdom and strength she had consequently forged. Later that night, with the children asleep and Laura reading beside him in bed, Roy reflected on the journey of the past 5 years. The intelligence network Resnick had been part of was largely dismantled. The MFSU had expanded, now safeguarding military families across the globe. The work continued, as it always did, new threats emerging as old ones receded. "What are you thinking about?" Laura asked, laying her book aside. "Just reflecting," Roy replied. "Max going to the academy, Lily making her own decisions about Bridget, the Bastion stands." Laura understood the reference. Early in their rebuilding, Roy had described his approach to restoring their family life as building a bastion, not to hide within, but to create an impregnable foundation from which the children could safely engage with the world. "You've given them something remarkable, Roy," she said. "Not just protection, but the tools to protect themselves." "We all have," he corrected, including her in the achievement. Laura had been instrumental in the children's healing, bringing warmth and stability while respecting the complex emotions surrounding their mother. His phone vibrated again, the final update he had been awaiting. The message was terse. "B. Donovan transfer complete. Full court-ordered communications blackout imposed." Roy set the phone aside without comment. Bridget had made her choices repeatedly. Now she would live with the consequences, forever isolated from the family she betrayed, and the children she had tried to exploit. The legal battle to sever all contact had been brutal but necessary, and the court had ultimately agreed that her continued manipulations posed an ongoing threat to both the children's well-being and national security. In the morning, Roy would help Max load his car for the academy. In the fall, he would watch Lily begin her final year of high school. Their lives would continue, shaped but not defined by the betrayals of the past. The bastion he had built around his family was not made of walls, but of truth, transparency, and unyielding principle. Within its bounds, his children had found not only security, but the strength to forge their own path. Beyond its protection, those who chose deceit over loyalty, manipulation over love, would find no quarter, no forgiveness, and no return. Some might call him unforgiving. Roy considered it clarity of purpose. The enemy had once invaded his home, using those he loved as weapons against everything he stood for. That breach had been sealed, the damage repaired, the lessons learned, never again. Ladies and gentlemen, since you've listened to the end of this story, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments which state you're watching from. Let's see what percentage of elite viewers make it to the end.